For those of you watching this on YouTube later, I'm going to just give you the 3 big news ahead of time, just so you can you can click away if you don't have the attention span. So number 1 is Crimson Desert is delayed again. Okay, it's now delayed to Q1, which is a big problem, and the Pearl Abyss stock dropped by 24% on the day after this earnings presentation. So it's a big deal, and we'll see why it's a big deal, because the losses keep piling up for Pearl Abyss. But that was, from an investor perspective, I think the worst, and it's something they didn't even mention in this presentation that they came out with after an analyst asked the only question that was asked during this call. So pretty big deal. Crimson Desert is delayed. Secondly, Black Desert, their big IP, is not doing as well. We'll see the numbers right now. But thirdly, and most importantly for us and our community, EVE Online just posted the best quarter since 2016. And that is absolutely bonkers, right? We're talking about a 21-year-old game, and you can talk about, player numbers and terrible this, terrible that. CCP right now is just knocking it out of the park in the financials. And so we're going to be diving into those details. And, one stat that they hadn't mentioned before that they mentioned this time proactively is EVE Online has actually posted 7 quarters consecutively of year-over-year growth. So every quarter, the last 7 quarters were always better than the equivalent quarter in the year before, which is absolutely amazing. So that's the big stuff. But let's jump into the actual presentation. And yes, as Stike says in chat, they are still selling CCP, or rumors are they're still wanting to sell CCP. So these good numbers are definitely a welcome sight if they are window dressing CCP to be sold at the maximum price to potentially cover the rest of their losses, and then putting all of their hopes on Crimson Desert. So if we look at the overview, as they say, we're looking at operating revenue here. It's the second worst quarter for Pearl Abyss in terms of operating revenue, barely missing the worst, which was Q3 last year. Overall, Black Desert does Black Desert things on EVE. We all know this, but the Legion expansion came out, and there was FanFest. They are pinning a lot of this growth on Legion and FanFest. I think it's maximum half of year-over-year growth for EVE Online is that. It's much more what sales are going on, right? And you all know that EVE nowadays, up until last week when CCP said they were going to stop the FOMO, I think FOMO was driving a lot of the revenue and the spending behavior of players, of EVE Online players. And so I think we had some massive sales going, and that drove revenue numbers quite a bit. But in order for that to work, you gotta have players that want to spend money in the game. And so, overall here, nothing all that new. Interesting here that they mentioned Crimson Desert, that, they're ramping up marketing. And some of you might have seen the 13-minute gameplay video that is out there now, so you can see that. But they're not mentioning here that it's delayed, but it actually is. So that's the big news. Crota, anything else on this page that caught your eye?
No, I would emphasize what you said about all the sales CCP are doing. I mean, go back to September 2023, and it feels like they got somebody more professional in to try and sort of capture more of our wallet, if you like, from existing players with the sales. And maybe they've just got that to a percentage of revenues that they feel comfortable with, and they can't increase it anymore.
I definitely think so. I think they've maximized that game, and now it's interesting where they will go based on the dev blog that we saw last week that said the end of FOMO is near. Some people ask me what FOMO meant. So it's the fear of missing out. So it's the strategy of companies running running login events, making you log in, making you be active in game even when you might not feel like it, and is the same thing on the sales side, creating massive sales that seem like they are too good to pass up. And so a lot of those things drive revenue numbers, and I think a lot of those things would have been very much looked down upon 10 or 20 years ago, when Eve started, but nowadays they are just so common in the gaming space that it's they can get away with it. And I think in the past year they have maximized that game, which is not to the advantage of the player, but it is to the advantage of these financials that we're looking at. So yeah, we already talked about operating revenue here for Pearl Abyss overall. Year over year down 2.7%, quarter over quarter down 4.9%. That is not great, but what's even worse is that they have a massive loss here of 11.8 billion won for the quarter, and even the net profits that they sometimes are able to balance out through their financial activities are terrible, at minus 22.7 billion won, minus 29% net loss. That is not good, no matter how you look at it, right, Kuda?
Yeah, a couple of things to say on this. I mean, that minus 11.8 billion loss was actually a bit more than what the market was looking for. Two reasons for that. One, revenues themselves were a bit lower, Black Desert Mobile and also currency. But also the other reason, of course, is they'd ramped up marketing for Crimson Desert, which is now really going to count for nothing. So that was a bit unfortunate.
Yeah, thanks for adding that. This is the big change to previous reports. The revenue by core IP is back. And you gotta think here, Crota, that they're doing this because they want to show how good EVE Online is doing if they are trying to sell CCP, right? That's got to be one of the big reasons. What do you think?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the reason they stopped disclosing it separately about 6 months ago is I think they've got a new finance director who,
Yes.
for whatever reason, decided not to disclose them separately, and then quite by surprise, unless the analysts, of course, are asking for this, quite by surprise, it comes back, and of course, it comes back when CCP is doing fantastically. So, I don't think it's unreasonable to put two and two together and conclude that this is trying to sort of show CCP in the best light for perhaps a sale.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, this quarter is the best since CCP was bought by Pearl Abyss, and even more. They said in their call that it's the best EVE Online quarter since 2016. That's almost 10 years. That is quite amazing for a 20-something-year-old game. And what I thought was even more impressive was that they said in the call that it was the 7th consecutive quarter with year-over-year growth. So for 7 consecutive quarters, they've been doing better than the quarter in the previous year, which, again, for a 20-something-year-old game, they have got to feel good about this, right?
Definitely. And if you looked at the rolling 12-month revenue numbers for the last 4 quarters, the revenues under Pearl Abyss ownership have been at record levels for CCP. So, I mean, all credit to CCP for actually making this happen. This is not, you would not expect, as you sort of say, a 20-year-old game to sort of, be almost at its all-time peak, which was in 2013. It's almost there.
Yeah. And Drake mentions this in chat right here, and I was going to mention that next, is that the shift to North America and Europe that we see here is, one of the big reasons for that is because EVE Online is mainly driven by revenue from North America and Europe. This does not favor the reporting in Korean won. So this is a 24.2 million that is under non-favorable forex conditions, right? Because the numbers could have been even better with a stronger US dollar. If we assume the US numbers are larger than the EU numbers, which Crota, you earlier were hinting at EU being larger. I don't know if we have an indication for that. Traditionally speaking, the US is a very, very strong region, or North America is a very, very strong region for
Yeah,
EVE Online.
I'd have to go back to my notes to check that. It's been sliding one way or the other. I should probably have worked this out before the call started.
Yeah, no worries. Either way, quite an amazing quarter for EVE Online. In inversely, Black Desert is not doing well, right? We see a clear shift here away from mobile. We know that last quarter Black Desert Mobile stopped in China, right? That was the big news last quarter, and now overall they're not doing terribly well right now. Black Desert, right, Koda?
Yeah, so the Black Desert Mobile, they lost early. They lost a mobile contract in China. So those mobile Black Desert revenues have fallen off a cliff. There is a reasonable assumption you could make that core Black Desert is probably still growing, but it can't offset the decline in mobile.
No. So what they need is some new IP, which their hope lies on Crimson Desert. It was supposed to come in Q4 of this year. They've now moved it to Q1 of next year, and that, I think, shattered the trust from investors here, and that's why we see a 24% drop in share price for Pearl Abyss after this call. Overall, I think, I've read that, going into 2026, a lot of games are trying to avoid launching too closely to the next Grand Theft Auto, which is always something you want to avoid. And Crimson Desert seems to be sliding just into that time frame, so it's interesting to see what they're going to do there. What we do see is that if we look at their advertising expenses, those are already massive, and a lot of that is going to be Crimson Desert, right, Koda?
Yeah, no, exactly. They had already started the promotions in the US. In fact, as these numbers show, they'd already spent it. Which they're now going to miss the Christmas window with the launch of Crimson Desert. So any promotions they've done now is almost a waste of time, really.
Yeah,
the big issue.
Go ahead.
The big issue with Crimson Desert falling out of Q4 this year and hopefully into Q1 next year is 150 billion won of revenues that just move out of 2025 into 2026. And that is quite serious for Pearl Abyss. They will unlikely make a profit this year, so they'll make a loss because they've literally lost 150 billion of expected revenues, and that's sort of the critical feature here, and that's why I think the shares fell 24%. And then, as you sort of point out, this is the 7th delay of the launch, and there was only one question on the analyst call, and basically the question was, we're now losing confidence that you'll actually even meet a deadline that you've set today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely serious, and it's interesting to think about when they knew about this and how much that has to do with the rumors of them putting up CCP for sale, of whether this is supposed to fill some kind of cash gap potentially because of the pushback of Crimson Desert. If you look at the news reports about Crimson Desert, the reception so far to the gameplay trailers and the game show participations that they have done is quite positive. So the hype for Crimson Desert is there. So the 24% hit that they took on the stock is even more massive if you consider that most people are excited for it. So investors in a normal quarter where they would have hit the deadline, I think the stock would have increased rapidly because of the positive feedback that we're getting from the market for Crimson Desert. Sila in chat is saying, isn't it dumb for CCP to put up CCP for a PA to put up CCP for sale if they're the ones making money? Well, it's I'm gonna use a football analogy here because the you want to sell a player when they're playing their best, right? Um, unless you think they can play better or they can play this well for another 5 years, right? Otherwise, unless you're one of the clubs with infinite money, which certainly exists in football, you're going to want to sell that player, and I think that's what the decision that Pearl Abyss is having to do now. Right now, with these numbers, this is probably the highest price they could still get for CCP, because it's unlikely that CCP will continue this growth that they have shown in the last 2 years. For a 23-year-old game, I think it would not be unrealistic for them to expect CCP to at some point not be able to perform like this anymore. Especially because the player numbers, they recovered, but it's not like player numbers are going through the roof. It's more that CCP has gotten better at monetizing the existing player base. So, yeah. What's the estimated price of a CCP sale? There hasn't been any numbers floating around. Crota and I did a stream a couple of months ago in June that you can find out there on YouTube where we speculate about it. I don't remember, Crota, what we said, but we said it's definitely they're never going to recover what they paid for CCP, and I doubted that they would get anywhere close to 100 million. I thought it was going to be lower.
We were flailing around a lot because overall CCP is still loss making. It has the same issues that Pearl Abyss has.
Yeah.
It's EVE Online, it's probably highly profitable, but they're spending a lot of money on new game titles. I think we guessed it could get 150, and whoever bought it would have to seriously think about what to do with the spending on new games titles. But I think we guessed $150 million, but they owe Pearl Abyss 50 million anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how they get the 100. We didn't really know. We didn't have enough numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. But overall, as you're saying, CCP is in a very similar boat here, with maybe the exception, depending on whether you think Black Desert is actually loss making or not. But eFrontier is something that CCP is putting a lot of dev time on. They're hiring a lot of people for eFrontier. If you go to the open positions on the CCP website, 80% of it is eFrontier. And so that's right now where the investment is going. And should eFrontier not be a success, that's going to be a serious issue for CCP. And right now, if I were an investor, I would be, the eFrontier would probably be the main reason why I wouldn't invest right now. Not because I hate the game, not because I don't wish it any well, but just because I think the risk is just so massive with a blockchain related game in the EVE universe when the community has already rejected that thought so much. So, I think very much in the same boat, but I think right now is the time to say congratulations, CCP. This was a massive quarter. And that's it. Crota,
This
anything
slide
else?
here, the balance sheet slide, the first slide in the appendix is interesting. Yep. This is the first time that they sort of revealed that the 80-odd billion of debt that they've got, actually 70 billion of it as of this quarter is due within 12 months. Now that's sort of okay.
Please?
What do? You either refinance it, which is normal. Now this business is loss making. They probably have to pay more. They could pay it off with their own cash. Well, their own cash is depleting pretty quickly, so they probably wouldn't want to do that. Or you plug the hole by selling, CCP, and that's, I think, this is where the rumors sort of sweep up again. As you sort of said, it's interesting the timing of it all. When did they know they were going to have to delay Crimson Desert? Did that sort of mean, okay, we better sort of think about trying to raise cash from elsewhere? Yeah, so I mean, on the balance sheet, that's the most interesting item. They have that 70 billion won that within 12 months' time has to be refinanced, and normally you don't wait until the final deadline. You do it 6 to 9 months ahead of schedule.
Interestingly, though, we haven't heard anything after June regarding a CCP sale, right? I there's not been a single news story. There hasn't been any leaks. There hasn't been, any public bidders. Nothing, right?
Nothing at all. No, absolutely nothing at all. All the news around it died down. In fact, I was very surprised in the analyst call this week that none of the analysts asked, "Are you potentially thinking about selling CCP?" There was only one question. The way the management call went was they went through it all, and then the finance director finished his sort of review, and then they handed over to questions and answers. But just before the first question came in, the chief executive said, "Oh, just one thing. I've just got to announce the delay of Crimson Desert," and he gave various reasons. There was absolute silence. The operator had to ask a couple of times if anybody wanted to ask a question. Normally, there were 6 or 7 questions from the analysts, and there was only
Yeah.
one question. And it was from one analyst who said, "Look, I've kind of lost trust, or not trust, wrong word, lost confidence in your ability to hit the deadline. How can you assure us this time it's going to work?" And as you say, May is when Grand Theft Auto 6 launches, so you can't do it in May. You probably can't do it in April. So if they miss Q1, we're in serious issues, I think, with Pearl Abyss. So yeah, and all this unfortunately overshadows what were fantastic CCP numbers.
Yep. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that one question caused a few heart attacks among investors, and then nobody was able to ask any more questions. Cool. Crota, I mean, this was a very, very cool quarter. Lots of stuff happening. I hope next quarter is going to be half as interesting as this one, and it's got to be, because if they hit the deadline for Crimson Desert, or they don't push it, then that's one of the few calls they've had in the last 2 years where they don't have bad bad news for Crimson Desert. And if they do, then that might be also a positive surprise, and we're going to see a lot of a lot of movement, I think, in the Pearl Abyss stock price. So if you guys are not of the faint of heart with your money, then Pearl Abyss stock is probably something that you want to keep an eye on in the next few weeks. Okay, Crota, anything else?
Well, the only thing I'll say is normally with these quarterly numbers, we try and work out what the player numbers have done. But because the percentage of revenue is sort of changing with how much comes from in-game sales, we can't really do that at the moment, unfortunately. So in the old days, we would just strip out the price increase of the sub, look at the revenue change and say, therefore, we know the player numbers have done this, or account numbers. We actually can't do that at the moment, unfortunately, until the percentage of sort of sales, if you like, as part of revenue stabilizes.
Yeah, for sure. But we have other ways of doing that. So I think concurrent player numbers are being published, and so that's a very good indicator of whether numbers are going up or not, if you assume that the average playing time is about the same. But that's something for next time. Cool. Thank you, Crota, for stopping by as usual. We're gonna jump to the rest of the show. Oz report and some deals in the store, and that sort of stuff. Make sure you hang out in chat, Crota. Would love to have your expertise in answering questions in chat, and otherwise, I'm going to see you next quarter for the next numbers.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Cool. All right. That's Pearl Abyss numbers. Very, very interesting. I mean, it's always. Oh yeah! Thank you, Eve Miner, for cheering 100 biddies and and resubbing. Thank you. Sorry, the ad break was not timed super well. Yeah, these numbers are pretty crazy. Oh, Crota, I didn't pull up my numbers. This is what I didn't pull up earlier. I wanted to put side by side the year-over-year change and quarter-over-quarter change for EVE Online, Black Desert, and Pearl Abyss total. So if you look at EVE Online, we see year-over-year 12% up and quarter-over-quarter 18% up. Man, those are some stellar numbers. Black Desert year over year minus 8.5% and quarter over quarter minus 12%. Harsh. That is significant. And Pearl Abyss total, because Black Desert is most of that, we see year over year change minus 3%, which is not great, but also not the end of the world. And quarter over quarter change minus 5%. Nah, not great. But, that's why you have a portfolio. Right now, I can guarantee you that Pearl Abyss wishes that EVE Online was bigger and could carry more of the weight that Black Desert is dropping right now. All right.